The Galactic Council chamber floated in space like a giant crystal ball. Inside, thousands of alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. The chamber was huge, with holographic screens showing delegates from every corner of the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of pure energy. A few resembled Earth animals, but with extra limbs or strange colors. At the center of the chamber stood a massive creature. Supreme Commander Vrathos was 8 feet tall with 4 arms on each side of his body. His skin looked like black armor shining under the lights. He was the military leader of the Telon hegemony, the oldest and most powerful empire in the galaxy. The Telon controlled over 40,000 star systems. They had destroyed civilizations that challenged them. Vrathos raised all 8 of his arms. The chamber fell silent. Members of the Galactic Council, his voice boomed through translators. Today, the Telon hegemony makes a formal declaration. We declare war on the species called humanity. Gasps and shocked whispers filled the chamber. Some delegates started arguing immediately. Others checked their data screens to learn more about humans. These creatures have violated our laws, Vrathos continued. They expanded into protected zones. They broke the Treaty of Stellar Non-Aggression. They stole ancient technology that does not belong to them. For these crimes, they must face justice. Telon justice. Near the back of the chamber, a man sat quietly. Ambassador Hyun-Ki represented Earth and all human colonies. He was in his mid-40s wearing a simple dark suit. His face remained calm as Vrathos listed humanity's supposed crimes. Around him, other ambassadors whispered and pointed. Some looked at him with pity. Others seemed curious about how he would respond. Kylora, the insect-like ambassador from the Aldari species, leaned toward Hyun-Ki. Her translator made clicking sounds as she spoke. My friend, this is serious. The Telon have never lost a war. You must ask the Council for protection. Hyun-Ki smiled slightly but said nothing yet. Vrathos was still talking. The Telon hegemony has assembled the 7th Conquest Fleet. 5,000 warships stand ready. We give humanity one choice: surrender now or face complete destruction. We are merciful. We will allow them to live as subjects of our empire if they submit within 7 days. More whispers. Some ambassadors nodded, thinking this was reasonable. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They had joined the Galactic Council only 150 years ago. What chance did they have against an empire that was 200,000 years old? Finally, Hyun-Ki stood up. The movement was slow and relaxed. He raised his hand to request permission to speak. The council moderator, a floating sphere of blue light, acknowledged him. Ambassador Hyun-Ki of Earth, you may respond to these charges. Hyun-Ki walked to the speaker's platform. His footsteps echoed in the now silent chamber. Everyone expected him to deny the charges or maybe beg for mercy, or demand a council investigation. Diplomats always followed certain patterns in these situations. Instead, Hyun-Ki did something nobody expected. He laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a fake diplomatic chuckle. It was a genuine, amused laugh that came from deep in his chest. The sound filled the chamber. Some ambassadors looked at each other in confusion. Had the human lost his mind? Vrathos's armored face darkened with anger. You dare laugh? Your world faces destruction and you laugh? Hyun-Ki held up one hand, still smiling. I apologize, Supreme Commander. It's just... This is amusing to me. He reached into his diplomatic case and pulled out something that made many aliens lean forward in confusion. It was a newspaper. Actual paper with printed words and images. Most species had abandoned physical media thousands of years ago. Seeing paper in the Galactic Council was like seeing a stone tablet. Hyun-Ki unfolded the newspaper carefully. This is from Earth. It was published yesterday, about 3 hours after your government announced your intention to attack us. He held it up so the chamber's cameras could capture it. Holographic displays zoomed in on the headline. The headline read, Telon hegemony announces intent to attack humanity. Earth stock markets rally on news. Confused murmurs spread through the chamber. Stock markets rallying? That made no sense. When a powerful empire declares war, markets should crash. People should panic. But humans seemed excited? I don't understand this, Vrathos said, his voice sharp. Your people celebrate their coming destruction. Hyun-Ki folded the newspaper and held it under one arm. Not quite, Supreme Commander. Let me explain what this means. On Earth, when we hear about war, certain businesses do very well. Companies that build weapons. Companies that make spaceships. Companies that mine resources for military use. When your government announced war, investors rushed to buy stocks in these companies. Do you know what that tells us? He paused, looking around the chamber. It tells us that humans are not afraid. It tells us that our economy is ready. It tells us that war with the Tellan hegemony is something we have planned for. In fact, we have been planning for it since the day we joined this council. Now the whispers grew louder. Some ambassadors looked shocked. Others seemed intrigued. Vrathos slammed one of his massive fists on his podium. This is nonsense. You are bluffing. Humanity has no chance against the Tellan military. Hyunki's smile never wavered. Perhaps you are right, Supreme Commander. Perhaps we will lose. But before you commit your forces, I suggest you do something. Study human history. Really study it. Don't just look at our technology or count our ships. Look at what we have done to each other for the past 10,000 years. He started walking back to his seat, then paused and turned around. Oh, and Supreme Commander? I formally accept your declaration of war on behalf of all humanity. We will not surrender. We will not submit. Instead, we invite you to try your best. Please do send your 7th Conquest Fleet. Send as many fleets as you wish. We will be waiting. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Reporters from Galactic News Network scrambled to send updates. This was unprecedented. A young species, barely a century and a half in space, had just accepted a war challenge from the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Hyunki sat down calmly. Kylora stared at him with her large compound eyes. My friend, what have you done? What I was sent here to do, Hyunki replied quietly. He pulled out his communication device and typed a quick message to Earth. It read simply, they took the bait. Proceed with Phase 1. Back on Earth in a secure military facility, General Bora read the message and smiled. She turned to her staff. Gentlemen and ladies, the Tellan just made the biggest mistake in their 200,000-year history. They think this will be a conquest. We're going to teach them what total war really means. The screens around her showed defensive preparations that had been underway for months. Weapon systems charging, fleets moving into position, factories converting to war production. Humanity had not been idle during their time in the galaxy. They had watched. They had learned. And, most importantly, they had prepared. In the Galactic Council chamber, Vrathos was already leaving, confident in his upcoming victory. He did not see the small smile on Hyunki's face. He did not understand that the newspaper was a message not just for the Council, but for the Tellan themselves. Humanity was not afraid. They were ready, and they were going to prove why you should never underestimate a species that has been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. War scholar Thaxon sat in his study aboard the Tellan command station, surrounded by holographic displays. He had 6 arms, each one moving independently as he sorted through data. His assignment was simple: research humanity's military capabilities and confirm what everyone already knew. Humans were weak, young, unprepared. The war would last maybe a few weeks, but as Thaxon dug deeper into human history, his confidence began to crack. The first thing that troubled him was a war called World War I. He opened the file and started reading. His eyes widened. This war lasted 4 years. Over 20 million humans died. 20 million! Thaxon checked the numbers 3 times, certain there was an error. That was more than the entire population of some Tellan worlds. But it got worse. World War I was not even humanity's biggest conflict. Just 21 years later, they started World War II. This one lasted 6 years. The death count was over 70 million. 70 million. And these wars happened when humans were still confined to one planet, fighting with primitive weapons. Thaxon's hands trembled as he scrolled through more data. He found records of something humans called nuclear weapons. These were bombs that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Humans had built thousands of them. They pointed these weapons at each other for decades in something called the Cold War. They came close to destroying their own planet multiple times. Why? Thaxon whispered to himself. Why would any species create weapons to destroy themselves? He kept reading. The answer was clear. Humans did not create these weapons randomly. They created them because they understood war at a level most galactic species never reached. Humans studied war. They taught it in their schools. They wrote books about strategy and tactics. They made movies and games about combat. War was woven into their culture. Thaxon found records of human military academies, places where young humans trained for years just to learn how to fight. The Telon had military training, of course, but it was basic. Point your weapon, fire, follow orders. Human military training was different. They studied thousands of battles from their history. They learned about tactics, logistics, psychology, and strategy. They practiced fighting in every environment: land, sea, air, space, underground, underwater. Then Thaxon discovered something called total war. He read the definition and felt cold despite his warm blood. Total war meant that every single part of a society focused on winning. Every factory made weapons or supplies. Every citizen contributed. The military did not just fight on battlefields. They destroyed the enemy's ability to make war. They targeted factories, resources, transportation, everything. Humans had practiced total war multiple times in their history. They were good at it. Terrifyingly good. Thaxon stood up from his desk. He needed to report this to Supreme Commander Vrathos immediately. The 7th Conquest Fleet was already preparing to depart. They needed to know what they were facing. He rushed to Vrathos's command chamber. The Supreme Commander was reviewing fleet formations with his officers. Thaxon waited for a break in the conversation, then stepped forward. "Supreme Commander, I must speak with you about humanity." Vrathos barely looked at him. "Have you confirmed they are weak and unprepared?" "No, sir. Actually, I have found disturbing information. Humans are not— Scholar, I am busy. Give me the summary. How many major wars have humans fought?" Thaxon took a breath. "In the past 5,000 years, approximately 15,000 wars." The room went silent. An officer dropped the datapad he was holding. Vrathos turned his full attention to Thaxon. 15,000? That is impossible. No species fights that much. I have verified the data 3 times, sir. Humans have been in a state of war for most of their recorded history. They rarely have periods of true peace. Even when they are not fighting others, they fight among themselves. Then they must be stupid, another officer said. Constant war would destroy any civilization. That is what I thought too, Thaxon replied. But it did not destroy them. Instead, it shaped them. Every war taught them lessons. They improved their tactics. They developed new technologies. They became more efficient at warfare. And then, Supreme Commander, I discovered something else. What? Vrathos's voice was sharp. Humans nearly destroyed themselves with weapons called nuclear bombs. They came very close to extinction, but they survived. And they still have those weapons. Thousands of them. They never forgot how to make them or use them. What kind of species creates weapons that can end their own civilization and then just keeps them? Vrathos was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. You are being paranoid, scholar. Yes, humans fight each other, but that means they are divided. Weak. They will not unite against us, and their primitive weapons mean nothing against Talon shields and armor. But sir, enough. Vrathos's voice became hard. We have 5,000 ships. They have maybe a few hundred in their defensive fleets. We have been a galactic power for 200,000 years. They have been in space for barely 2 centuries. Numbers matter, scholar. Experience matters. We will crush them quickly. Thaxon wanted to argue more, but he knew it was useless. The Telon way was direct and overwhelming. They had won hundreds of wars this way. Vrathos would not change his strategy based on historical data about a primitive species. As Thaxon left the command chamber, he felt a deep sense of dread. He had spent weeks studying humanity, and he understood something that Vrathos did not. Numbers and experience did matter, but preparation mattered more. And humans had been preparing for war since the day their ancestors picked up the first stone to use as a weapon. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Bora sat in a secure bunker deep underground. Around her, screens showed live feeds from across human space, defense platforms powering up, fleets moving into position, factories working at maximum capacity. She looked calm, but inside, she felt the familiar rush of pre-battle tension. General, the Telon 7th Fleet will reach the Arcturus sector in 2 weeks, an officer reported. Good, Bora said. Commander Taeyang, is your defense force ready? On one screen, Commander Taeyang appeared. He was younger than Bora, but his eyes showed combat experience. Ready and waiting, General. We have deployed all minefields and positioned the defense platforms. The quantum cascade cannons are charged. Excellent. Remember, the goal is not just to win. The goal is to send a message. Let them bring their full force against Arcturus. Let them commit everything, and then show them what human defensive doctrine really means. Understood, General. They will regret coming to our sector. Bora smiled. She had been planning for this moment since humanity first encountered the Telon hegemony. The Telon were predictable. They always attacked with overwhelming force. They expected enemies to panic and surrender. They had never faced an enemy that wanted them to attack, an enemy that had turned entire star systems into traps. On another screen, Captain Subin appeared. She commanded a stealth frigate called the Silent Dawn. General, my ship is in position deep in Telon space. They have no idea we are here. Good. Begin mapping their supply routes and shipyard locations. When the time comes, we will need to strike their infrastructure. For now, just watch and learn. Yes, General. Bora leaned back in her chair. The pieces were all moving into place. The Telon thought they were predators hunting prey. They did not realize they were walking into a trap designed by a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. On the Telon command station, Thaxon sat alone in his study. He pulled up one more human historical file. It was a quote from an ancient human military strategist named Sun Tzu. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The Telon knew themselves. They were strong, experienced, and confident. But they did not know their enemy. They had not bothered to learn, and that Thaxon realized would cost them dearly. The Arcturus sector was quiet. 3 human colonies orbited different planets in the system. Mining stations floated near asteroid fields. Everything looked normal, peaceful. Only the military personnel knew what was hidden in the darkness of space. Commander Taeyang stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Defiant. His crew worked silently at their stations. Everyone knew what was coming. The Telon 7th Conquest Fleet would arrive soon. 5,000 warships against their defensive force of 250 ships. The numbers looked bad, but numbers did not tell the whole story. Commander, we are detecting the first wave, the sensor officer announced. They are exiting faster than light travel now. On the main screen, space began to shimmer. First a few ships appeared, then dozens, then hundreds. The Telon fleet emerged like a metal storm. Massive battle cruisers, each one the size of a small city. Destroyer squadrons moving in perfect formation. Carrier ships launching fighter craft. The sight was meant to inspire terror. Taeyang watched calmly. Begin recording. Make sure the entire galaxy can watch this. The Telon fleet took up position. A communication came through. Fleet Admiral Korthax appeared on screen. He was massive, even bigger than Supreme Commander Vrathos. His armor was covered in medals from dozens of campaigns. Human Commander, I am Fleet Admiral Korthax of the Telon 7th Conquest Fleet. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with destruction. Taeyang's expression did not change. Fleet Admiral, I have received your message. I must inform you that we will not surrender. Korthax laughed. You are fools. We have 5,000 ships. You have only a few hundred. Do you not understand mathematics? I understand mathematics very well, Taeyang replied. I also understand tactics. You see, Admiral, you have made a mistake. What mistake? You brought your entire fleet into our defensive perimeter. Thank you for that. It makes our job much easier. Korthax's smile disappeared. What are you talking about? Taeyang cut the communication. All units execute defensive pattern alpha. Light them up. Space exploded with light and fire. The first surprise came from the orbital defense platforms. The Telon had scanned them and assumed they were standard defensive weapons. They were wrong. Dr. Yujin's quantum cascade cannons unleashed beams of energy that tore through Telon's shields like paper. One shot erased a battlecruiser completely. Another sliced a destroyer in half. The Telon fleet tried to respond, but then the second surprise activated. Millions of stealth mines hidden in the darkness of space suddenly came alive. They were not simple explosives. Each mine had basic artificial intelligence. They communicated with each other, forming swarm patterns. Hundreds of mines would surround a single Telon ship and detonate simultaneously. Korthax watched in horror as his formation fell apart. Ships exploded left and right. His officers shouted reports, but there were too many. The attacks were coming from all directions at once. Return fire! Destroy those platforms! He ordered. The Telon fleet launched its own weapons. Missiles streaked toward the human defensive positions. But here came the third surprise. Human point defense systems were far more advanced than expected. Lasers and particle beams intercepted most of the incoming missiles. The few that got through hit shields that were stronger than they should be. Then the human fleet attacked. Commander Tae Yang's 250 ships had been hanging back, hidden behind the defense platforms. Now they surged forward, but they did not fight the way the Talon expected. Human ships were smaller and faster. They moved in unpredictable patterns, using the debris from destroyed Talon ships as cover. When they fired, they did not use traditional energy weapons. They launched missiles. Thousands and thousands of missiles. Each missile was smart. Each one could think for itself, adjusting its course to avoid countermeasures. The Talon had never faced weapons like this. Their point defense systems were designed to shoot down a few dozen missiles at a time. They could not handle thousands. Cortex realized they needed to retreat. All ships fall back to jump point Delta. But there was a fourth surprise. As the Talon fleet turned to flee, more human ships appeared. These were different, smaller, almost invisible to sensors until they started firing. Captain Subin's Silent Dawn led a squadron of stealth frigates. They had been waiting in ambush, positioned perfectly to cut off the Talon retreat. The stealth frigates used weapons the Talon had never seen. Quantum torpedoes that phased through shields and exploded inside enemy ships. Electromagnetic pulse bombs that shut down entire vessels without destroying them. The Talon fleet could not fight what they could not see. "We are surrounded," an officer shouted on Corthax's bridge. The fleet admiral looked at his tactical display. Red icons everywhere. His fleet was being torn apart. In his 40 campaigns, he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought with precision and ruthlessness that seemed impossible for such a young species. Send a retreat signal. Every ship for themselves. Get out of this system any way you can. It was the right order, but too late. Only about 300 Talon ships managed to escape. The rest were destroyed or disabled. Corthax's own flagship took a direct hit from a quantum cascade cannon. The bridge exploded. The fleet admiral's last thought was confusion. How could this have happened? On the Defiant, Tae Yang watched the battle wind down. His crew was exhausted but triumphant. They had lost 47 ships and 2 defense platforms. The enemy had lost over 4,600 vessels. "Sir, we are receiving communications from Earth. General Bora wants a report." Tae Yang activated his communication screen. General Bora's face appeared. "Commander, status?" "The Talon 7th Conquest Fleet has been destroyed, General. A few hundred ships escaped, but the sector is secure." Bora nodded, showing no emotion. "Casualties?" 47 ships lost. About 3,000 personnel. The Talon lost somewhere around 500,000. Acceptable. Make sure the battle footage is released to the galactic news networks. The Council needs to see what happened here. And Tae Yang? "Yes, General." "Good work. This was just the first battle. They will come back with more. Be ready. Always, General." Across the galaxy, the Battle of Arcturus became instant news. Holographic displays in the Galactic Council chamber showed the footage on repeat. Ambassadors watched in shock as the mighty Talon fleet was dismantled by human forces. Ambassador Hyun-Ki sat quietly in his seat, watching the reactions. Some species looked frightened. Others looked impressed. A few even looked pleased. The Talon had made many enemies over their 200,000 years of dominance. Kylora leaned toward him. "Your people are more dangerous than anyone knew." "We tried to warn them," Hyun-Ki replied simply. They chose not to listen. In the Talon command station, Supreme Commander Vrathos watched the same footage. His 8 fists clenched so hard they left dents in his metal desk. Around him, officers stood in silence, too afraid to speak. Finally, war scholar Thaxon entered. He looked at Vrathos with sad eyes. "Supreme Commander, I tried to tell you. Humans have been preparing for this since they joined the galaxy. They studied us. They learned our tactics, and they designed their defenses specifically to counter our strengths." Vrathos turned to him slowly. "This changes nothing. We have lost 1 fleet. We have dozens more. We will crush them with overwhelming numbers. Sir, please reconsider. The humans have shown they can—" "Enough!" Vrathos's voice echoed through the chamber. "I will not be lectured by a scholar. Prepare the Grand Fleet. We will attack Earth itself. We will show these primitives what real power looks like." Thaxon bowed and left. Outside the command chamber, he pulled out a secure communicator. He thought for a long moment, then made a decision that would have been considered treason if anyone found out. He sent a message to Ambassador Hyun-Ki. The message was simple. "You were right to prepare. Frathos will not stop. He is planning to attack Earth directly with the Grand Fleet. Warn your people. On Earth, General Bora received the intelligence with a thin smile. So, they are coming to us. Perfect. Activate Phase 2. It is time to show them what a real defensive network looks like. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassadors from every species debated what to do. The Battle of Arcturus had shocked everyone. Suddenly, humanity did not look weak anymore. Ambassador Nari stood at the speaker's podium. She was younger than Hyunki, with sharp eyes and a confident voice. Hyunki had returned to Earth to help with strategic planning, leaving her to handle the political side of the war. Members of the council, Nari began, we come here today not to ask for help but to offer a warning. The Telon hegemony started this war. They declared it publicly. They attacked our colonies, and now they have learned the price of aggression. A Telon representative stood up. His voice was angry. You destroyed our 7th fleet. Hundreds of thousands dead. This is a war crime. Nari turned to him calmly. War crime? You declared war on us. You attacked first. We defended ourselves. That is not a crime. That is justice. Another ambassador spoke up from a species called the Ventari. But surely both sides can negotiate peace now. The Telon have learned their lesson. More fighting helps no one. Peace? Nari's voice became cold. We offered peace by simply existing. We followed all galactic laws. We minded our own business. The Telon chose war. Now they must face the consequences of that choice. She activated a holographic display. It showed documents, communications, and military orders. These are classified Telon military plans we obtained. They show that the Telon hegemony has been planning to eventually subjugate or destroy 23 other council species. After us, you are next. The Telon do not want a galaxy of equals. They want an empire of subjects. Gasps and angry voices filled the chamber. Several ambassadors started arguing. The Telon representative tried to deny it, but Nari had evidence. Real documents with real signatures. We are releasing all of this to the public galactic networks. Nari continued. Everyone will see the truth. The Telon are not defending themselves. They are trying to expand their power. We just happen to be their first target because we are young, and they thought we would be easy. The session ended in chaos, but the damage was done. By the next day, half a dozen species had declared neutrality, meaning they would not help the Telon. 3 species, including the Aldari, formally announced support for humanity. While the politics played out, the military situation was evolving quickly. The Telon hegemony was mobilizing for total war. Supreme Commander Vrathos had committed 30% of their military might to a massive counteroffensive. 50,000 ships divided into 5 fleets moved toward human space. But this time the Telon avoided colonies. They learned from Arcturus. Instead, they targeted supply lines, mining operations, and shipyards. Places with less defense but critical to the war effort. The strategy worked at first. Human losses mounted. 3 major shipyards were destroyed. Supply convoys were intercepted. Resources became scarce. On Earth, some officials began to panic, suggesting they should negotiate before things got worse. General Bora listened to these suggestions in a military council meeting. When the politicians finished talking, she stood up. No. General, we cannot sustain these losses, one official argued. The Telon are strangling our supply chains. That is exactly what we expected them to do, Bora replied calmly. She activated a star chart. Yes, we have lost some facilities, but look at what else is happening. The chart showed human territory and Telon territory. Red markers indicated where Telon fleets were currently positioned. All 5 of their fleets are spread across our space, hunting our convoys. Do you know what that means? It means we are losing, the official said. It means they are not defending their own territory. Bora smiled. It is time for Phase 2. Captain Dong-hyun, are you ready? On another screen, Captain Dong-hyun appeared. He was a hard man with cold eyes. Behind him, officers worked at stations on a warship bridge. My strike force is ready, General. 1,000 ships, fully loaded with quantum torpedoes and stealth systems. We have been waiting for this order. Then execute Operation Hammerblow. Hit them where it hurts. Make them regret leaving their home undefended. With pleasure, General. Captain Dong-hyun's strike force had been hiding in the outer regions of human space, waiting. Now they activated their faster-than-light drives and jumped deep into Telon territory. The journey took 3 days. When they arrived, they found exactly what intelligence had predicted: minimal defenses. The Telon had pulled most of their ships to fight humanity. They thought their core worlds were safe. They were wrong. Donghyun's force moved like ghosts. They hit the Korvax shipyard first. This massive facility built 15% of all Telon warships. The attack lasted 4 hours. Human ships appeared from stealth, launched everything they had, and disappeared before the defenders could respond effectively. When they left, the shipyard was a field of debris. Next came supply depots, resource stations, communications hubs, training facilities. Donghyun's force struck target after target, moving fast, never staying in one place long enough to be trapped. The psychological impact was devastating. For 200,000 years, the Talon core worlds had been safe. No enemy had ever reached them. Now suddenly, war came to their home. Civilian populations panicked. Some Talon demanded their government end the war immediately. Others called for even more military action. Supreme Commander Vrathos faced a difficult choice: keep pressing the attack on human supply lines or recall his fleets to defend home territory. Either way, humanity won. If he kept attacking, human raiders would destroy more infrastructure. If he pulled back, human supply lines would recover. He chose to recall the fleets. It was the only option that made political sense. But it meant the Telon offensive had failed. As the Telon fleets withdrew, human forces struck again. Commander Taeyang led a counteroffensive that reclaimed lost territory. Captain Subin's stealth frigates hunted down retreating Telon ships. The momentum of the war shifted completely. On the Telon command station, war scholar Thaxon watched everything fall apart. He had tried to warn them. Now it was too late. The Telon hegemony was learning a lesson humans had known for thousands of years. It is not enough to have a big military. You must also know how to use it properly. Thaxon sent another message to Ambassador Hyun-ki. This one contained detailed information about Telon fleet movements, defensive positions, and supply routes. It was complete treason, but Thaxon had studied human history enough to understand something important. This war would not end until one side was completely defeated. The Telon had started it with arrogance and pride. Now they would pay the price. On Earth, Hyun-ki received the intelligence and forwarded it to General Bora. She studied the data carefully. This is excellent. With this information, we can plan Phase 3. Phase 3, General? An officer asked. Bora's expression became serious. We are going to attack their capital world. We are going to bring this war to the heart of their empire, and we are going to force them to surrender unconditionally. That is very aggressive, General. The Council might object. The Council has no vote in how we defend ourselves, Bora replied. The Talon declared this war. They set the rules. Now they will live with the consequences. Across human space, factories worked around the clock. Shipyards that survived the Telon attacks built new vessels. Weapons were manufactured by the millions. Soldiers trained for the coming battles. Humanity had fully mobilized for total war. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Nari gave another speech. This one was broadcast across every inhabited world. The Telon hegemony believed we would be easy prey. They thought our youth made us weak. They forgot that every species in this galaxy had to fight to survive at some point in their history. The difference is humans never stopped fighting. We are very, very good at it, and we will not stop until this war is over on our terms. The galaxy watched and waited. The ancient empire and the young upstarts were heading toward a final confrontation. Everyone knew the biggest battle was still to come. The call to arms went across all Telon worlds. Supreme Commander Vrathos stood before the Telon High Council, his 8 arms spread wide. We have suffered setbacks, yes, but we are the Telon hegemony. We have ruled this galaxy for 200,000 years. No primitive species will defeat us. The council members, ancient and powerful beings, nodded in agreement. They authorized Vrathos to use the Grand Fleet. This was the largest military force the Telon had ever assembled. 100,000 warships. 60% of their entire military capability. Every available ship was pulled from garrison duty, patrol routes, and defense stations. The plan was simple: attack Earth directly. Destroy humanity's homeworld and their will to fight would collapse. The Telon believed this absolutely. They had crushed rebellions this way dozens of times throughout their history. War scholar Thaxon sat in his quarters, watching the Grand Fleet assemble. He knew this was a mistake. Everything he had learned about humans told him they wanted this. They were baiting the Telon into committing everything to one massive attack. But no one would listen to him anymore. Vrathos had labeled him a coward and restricted his access to command meetings, so Thaxon did the only thing he could. He sent one more message to the humans. This one contained the complete battle plan, fleet composition, and timeline for the Grand Fleet's attack on Earth. When General Bora received the intelligence, she called an immediate meeting of Earth's Defense Council. They are bringing the Grand Fleet, 100,000 ships. They will arrive in 3 weeks. Some council members looked worried. One asked, "Can we hold against those numbers?" "Hold?" Bora smiled. "We are not just going to hold. We are going to destroy them. This is what we have been preparing for since the war started. Actually, since before the war started. Humanity has been turning the Sol system into a fortress for the past 50 years. She activated a holographic display of Earth's solar system. The amount of defensive infrastructure was staggering. Thousands of orbital platforms surrounded Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies, each one equipped with quantum cascade cannons, missile batteries, and shield generators. Between the planets floated millions of mines, drones, and automated defense stations. The asteroid belt had been turned into a massive weapons factory and defensive line. Jupiter's moons hosted secret military bases with experimental weapons. "We will let them come," Bora continued. "We will let them bring everything they have. And then we will show the galaxy what happens when you attack humanity's home." The message went out to all human ships and stations. Prepare for the Battle of Sol. Every vessel in human space began moving toward Earth. Colony defense forces, patrol ships, merchant vessels converted to military use, everything. Humanity was gathering its full strength for the first time. 3 weeks later, the Telon Grand Fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The sight was terrifying. 100,000 warships emerging from faster-than-light travel, filling space with metal and menace. On the lead ship, Supreme Commander Vrathos looked at his tactical display with satisfaction. "Broadcast our demands," he ordered. The message went out on all frequencies. "Humans of Earth, this is Supreme Commander Vrathos of the Telon Hegemony. You are surrounded by the Grand Fleet. Surrender immediately and we will show mercy. Your colonies will be spared. Your people will live as subjects of our empire. Refuse and we will destroy your home world and every human in this system. You have 1 hour to respond." The hour passed in silence. Then on every screen, on every communication channel, humanity's response appeared. It was not a single leader. It was not a military commander. It was thousands of humans from Earth and the colonies speaking together. This is humanity's answer. Come. Try. We are waiting. Vrathos snarled in anger. "All ships advance. Destroy everything." The Grand Fleet moved forward in massive formation. They entered the outer system, passing the orbit of Neptune. Nothing happened. They continued toward Uranus. Still nothing. They kept going, growing more confident. Then they reached the asteroid belt and hell broke loose. The asteroids were not natural anymore. Millions of them had been hollowed out and turned into weapon platforms. Suddenly, beams of energy lanced out from every direction. Telon ships began exploding before they could even identify targets. Vrathos ordered his fleet to return fire, but the asteroids were hard to destroy. They were made of solid rock and metal, much more durable than ships, and there were so many of them. The Grand Fleet pushed through, taking heavy losses. They passed Mars, where more defenses waited. Orbital stations launched wave after wave of missiles. Each missile was controlled by an advanced AI, making them nearly impossible to intercept. Finally, the Telon fleet reached Earth itself. What they saw made even veteran commanders hesitate. The planet was surrounded by a sphere of defense platforms, tens of thousands of them. Each one was the size of a small moon. "All ships focus fire on the platforms," Vrathos ordered. The Telon fleet unleashed everything. Energy weapons, missiles, kinetic projectiles. The defense platform's shields absorbed most of it, but some took damage. A few were destroyed. But for every platform that fell, 10 remained. And they were shooting back. The quantum cascade cannons that had destroyed the 7th Fleet at Arcturus were nothing compared to these. These were bigger, more powerful, more efficient. Each shot erased a Telon battlecruiser from existence. The human home fleet emerged from behind the moon. 50,000 ships, led by Admiral Jiho. They had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now they surged forward, attacking the Telon fleet from behind. Human ships fought with desperate courage. They knew this was their home. Their families were on that planet. There was no retreat, no surrender, only victory or death. Captain Subin's stealth force appeared again, hitting Telon command ships. Captain Dong Hyun led an assault on Vrathos's flagship. Commander Tae Yang coordinated the defense platforms with perfect precision. The battle raged for 3 days. Space around Earth became a graveyard of ships. But slowly, inevitably, the Telon fleet crumbled. They were outnumbered by defense platforms, outfought by ships that knew every inch of the battlefield, overwhelmed by weapons they did not understand. On the 3rd day, Vrathos's flagship was disabled. A quantum torpedo phased through its shields and destroyed the main reactor. The ship went dark, floating helplessly. Human Marines boarded and captured the Supreme Commander. Across the battlefield, Telon ships began surrendering. Some tried to flee, but they were surrounded. The few thousand ships that escaped limped back to Telon space, broken and defeated. General Bora stood in Earth's command center, watching the tactical display. Around her, people were cheering, crying with relief, hugging each other. The homeworld was safe. Humanity had won. Ambassador Hyun-ki entered the command center. He walked up to Bora. "Well done, General." "Thank you, Ambassador." "What happens now?" "Now," Hyun-ki said with a tired smile, "we show them how humans make peace. We do not destroy the Telon, we rebuild them. We teach them. And we make sure this never happens again." On the Telon command station, war scholar Thaxon watched the news of the Grand Fleet's destruction. He felt sad but not surprised. He had tried to warn them. He had studied human history and understood what they were capable of. Now his people had learned the hard way. A message came through his personal communicator. It was from Ambassador Hyun-ki. "Scholar Thaxon, thank you for the intelligence you provided. You saved lives on both sides. When this is over, I would like to invite you to Earth. We have much to discuss about the future." Thaxon typed a response. "I accept. Perhaps I can help my people understand what I should have made them see from the beginning. Humanity is not just another species. They are survivors. And you do not fight survivors to extinction. You make peace with them." The war was not officially over. The Telon government had not surrendered yet. But everyone knew the outcome. The Battle of Sol had broken the hegemony's military power. What came next would determine the future of the galaxy. And that future, for better or worse, would be shaped by humanity's choices.